Hey guys, Brett Elliott with APMEX here. I want to give you a little preview of what you're about to watch. We sat down with the CEO of the World Platinum Investment Council, Trevor Raymond, and he gave us an inside look on what's going on with platinum globally. A lot of this information isn't readily available public knowledge, and we didn't want to cut anything because it's so valuable. Instead, we broke it into 3 segments that we'll release as soon as they're ready. Putting these together takes a big investment on our part. So if you find these videos valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. It makes a huge difference and supports us so we can continue producing more videos. So I'm Brett Elliott, the Director of Content with APMEX, and I have with me here Trevor Raymond.
Hi, Brett. Great to be with you. I'm the CEO of the World Platinum Investment Council. We're in the US at the moment, visiting partners, and really great opportunity to speak to you about precious metals and platinum.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. Really excited to have this opportunity, and today we're planning to talk all about platinum, and we'll get some expert insight from you all about its potential as an investment vehicle. And so we've kind of looked at platinum and its history and its performance. It's gone up to over $2,000 an ounce in the past. Currently, this over the year to date, it's been trading between about $925 to $1145. And we're seeing some bullish trends emerging in the marketplace, right? We're seeing energy shortages affecting mining supply in South Africa. We're seeing increased demand in the industrial sector, on the automotive and glass capacity. So we're looking forward to talking about that and the macro outlooks and some headwinds, some tailwinds for the metals. So first, before we jump into the really meaty stuff and really get down into it, could you tell our audience a little bit about platinum?
Sure, Rich. I think particularly for anybody considering owning platinum as an investment asset for the first time, there's probably, I suppose, 3 aspects that they really should just think about before embarking. I think the first is that platinum is a precious metal, like gold. Second is that platinum is also an industrial metal, and therefore has some, really does some good things in industrial applications. And thirdly, the things that are making platinum look particularly interesting right now do seem to have legs, that they should last for 5, maybe 10 years. And that's what's making it look a lot interesting. So just going through those 3, I think the first is that platinum's a precious metal. It's got the same attributes as gold. It's more dense than gold. It hasn't been around for 3,000 years because of its melting point. But in general, the correlation between the price of platinum and gold is quite high. So anybody owning gold, also owning platinum does provide that diversification. And so it gives you a kind of a precious underpin. Separately from that, platinum's an industrial metal. It does some really cool stuff in industrial applications, its catalytic properties, its temperature, its strength. And usually that's counter-cyclical. So when the world's doing bad economically, industrial metals do badly and gold does well. And right now, even though the world isn't doing too well, platinum's got some interesting attributes, and that's mainly because the market is so much smaller. It's 30 times rarer than gold. So because of this 8 million ounce market, only typically 5% is for investment. The rest is actually consumed. So the supply demand fundamentals for platinum have a stronger link to its value. And then the third point, what's making platinum look interesting is right now we've got a 1 million ounce deficit in this market, this 8 million ounce market. We've got supply that's constrained, and we've got demand growth that's particularly strong. As you mentioned, in the industrial area, it's probably its strongest year ever, and growing despite the inflationary outlook. And then we've got more platinum being used in gasoline vehicles to replace expensive palladium. And that's giving legs despite, again, fewer vehicles being produced and the economic outlook. And then the last one is quite unique for a commodity to have a really brand new demand segment. And platinum's used to make green hydrogen in electrolyzers, and it's also used in fuel cell vehicles. So over the next 20 years, we think up to 30 or 40% of platinum demand could come from this new area. So if you think about nickel or copper, to have a new demand segment is quite interesting. So you've got constrained supply and demand growth, and that looks set to remain for between 5 and 15 years. I think that's what might be quite interesting to your to your audience, and then we can get into the detail of many of those aspects.
Well, thank you. Yes, let's talk about some of those details and the supply and demand fundamentals. And I think kind of the first one of the big ones is, inelastic supply that's highly constrained, and platinum is pretty densely mined in South Africa, right? That's where the majority of platinum comes from. I think somewhere between
72%.
72%, yes. Okay, perfect. And that changes a little bit based on each year based on what's going on in the world. Well, what's going on in the world right now in South Africa is electricity shortages, right? They just went through, I believe it was stage 6 load shedding. And they had a state of emergency for a couple of months. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on there and what's causing these shortages and whether they're going to get any relief and what it's doing to platinum supply?
Sure. So, I think, as I mentioned, this 8 million ounce market, 6 million ounces comes from primary mining, and 2 million ounces comes from recycling, mainly from auto catalysts when vehicles reach the end of their lives. So turning to the supply, 72% comes out of South Africa and a fair chunk comes out of Russia. So there are concerns about the platinum out of Russia, more so the palladium out of Russia. So although the metals themselves haven't been sanctioned, Russian mining is suffering in terms of equipment availability. So, if Russia's lucky, platinum supply will stay flat, and if it isn't, it'll probably decline a little. But then coming back to South Africa, as you point out, one of the biggest issues recently is the electrical supply grid. So the South African supply grid is dominated by coal-fired power stations, one small nuclear plant. But in general, that system has become stretched and quite unreliable. So the blackouts that you mentioned have been getting more severe. In fact, in the first part of this year, there have been more of those load-shedding events than in the entire year last year. So it's been getting worse. I think the concern is that anything up to 15% of supply could be at risk if those things continue. Having said that, it's a national emergency, and they did that to highlight the importance of it to the country. And what we've seen actually over the last week is things have eased quite considerably for some strange reasons. So because the weather systems that came in from the south and from the Southern Ocean is that the wind was particularly strong, and suddenly they had about an extra 900 megawatts of wind power that they don't normally get.
Wow.
And in a very constrained situation, that made quite a big difference. The other thing is that it is cooler in winter, and the coal output is slightly better in the cooler conditions. So those two things have actually seen their load shedding move from sitting between 6 and 8 back to like 3 quite quickly. They're certainly not out of the woods. We don't think it's going to end up in being sort of a crisis. However, having said that, if supply is severely impacted in South Africa, the nature of platinum is that metal is still available for industrial applications and vehicle manufacture. So you shouldn't see what we saw with semiconductor chips in the auto industry, where you had vehicles that were half built waiting for chips. In this instance, what would occur is that price would adjust. And there's over 3 million ounces sitting in ETFs. There are above ground stocks. So you will need a rise in the price, and the metal can become quite quickly available for industrial applications. And that's one of the big benefits of platinum compared to, say, palladium. Platinum's got roughly 40% in automotive, 40% in jewelry, and 20% in industrial. So those other segments can give up demand, whereas with palladium, I think it was over 83% was just used for vehicles. So that's why we saw that the palladium price went from $300 an ounce to $3,000, and that's particularly because there was no balancing. So I think we won't see vehicle manufacturing stop because of power shortages in South Africa, but it certainly is highlighting the constrained supply. And adding to that, you've had 10 years of pretty rubbish platinum prices, in fairness, to anybody looking at the price chart. Platinum's looked pretty miserable for a long time for a bunch of reasons. So as a result, there's been an underinvestment in mining capacity. And that investment is necessary over quite a sustained period because it's underground hard rock mining. So I think the concerns about supply mean that you're unlikely to see any supply response to price for a good 3 to 5 years, and that's quite meaningful for investors.
There's a couple of things you mentioned here that I kind of want to address. So first is just over the last week, there's been a change in the winds, so to speak, for South Africa. It's funny, 3 weeks ago, the Financial Times was reporting that Eskom's chief was saying, prepare for stage 8 load shedding this winter. So it's amazing how fast things can change. So to your point, not out of the woods yet. Glad to hear that things are easing a little
Just a
bit.
little.
Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think it's probably unpredictable to a certain extent.
Well, look, I think the situation is dire. I think
Mm-hmm.
stage 6 and stage 8 load shedding is definitely still viable, and typically the load is higher in winter. So this is quite unusual, and I don't think it's sort of volatility or things can change quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they've got some renewables, and wind does help it. I mean, they had about 21 gigawatts under maintenance, and over the last 2 weeks, they've cut that to 16 gigawatts.
Hmm.
So there is a national desire to do whatever can be done to rectify it. They may not manage, and they may still not be out of the woods. So in general, supply is under threat as a result of electricity. I'm not trying to
Oh,
just
absolutely.
to sort of sugarcoat that in any shape or form. But again, flat to slightly down seems to be the prognosis. But again, for a couple of years, Eskom isn't getting out of that hole in a hurry. The other thing that's happening is that the ability for private companies to generate their own power was capped for many years, and that's been lifted, so it's uncapped at the moment. In line with mining companies trying to reduce their own carbon emissions, most of the platinum mining companies are embarking on building solar and wind.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly will ease the load on the coal-fired power station, and in a way is a bit of a strange way to achieve decarbonisation because your grid is struggling. But that's also something that'll soften the medium term.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that you just mentioned was about the type of mining. So if I recall correctly, most of the mining is underground for platinum.
Correct.
Open pit mining, I think there's one major one for platinum.
Correct.
Also in South Africa.
Yeah.
Right. What's the reason for that? How long does it take to bring these mines online?
That's a good question. So I think the ore body in South Africa just happens to be on the planet the mother lode. Over 80% of reserves and resources are in South Africa. It was actually a volcanic intrusion that came up and then settled. So you've got this basin that's about 300 miles across, and that's where mining has happened for 70 years. And the known reserves and resources could probably support about 100 years of production. So it's quite unusual compared to other commodities who actually have to keep exploring to find the stuff. It's there, it's known. It's just about getting it out. And on average, it's a lot shallower than gold mining by far. Sort of 400-500 meters is the sort of the average depth. There's one large open pit operation there, and the rest are underground. So the underground operations do take anything up to 7 years to get going.
Wow.
And there's a large capacity there. South Africa's output has dropped from 5 million ounces a year to 4 million ounces a year over the last 14 years or so. So it does have the capacity to increase, but again, low prices have led to it decreasing.
Of course.
Interestingly.
I think that pretty well covers the supply side of platinum. And hey everyone, thanks for watching this segment. Look forward to the next one where we talk about the demand story shaping up for platinum. Trevor really opens up on a whole new industry where platinum is a major benefactor, and we think it'll open your eyes to platinum's potential. Again, if you haven't already, please support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.